I've always believed that the Suzuki King Quad is the best ATV ever made. I even did a whole video about it. The key is these levers here. These levers mean you have 15 forward gears and 3 reverse gears, plus a bunch of different front axle options. There's a lot more gears than you have with any other ATV I know of. It's come to my attention that that same powertrain was used by a different manufacturer, and that manufacturer was Articat. What I have here is an Articat 300 4x4, and this uses the exact same powertrain I love out of that Suzuki King Quad, but they put it in a different chassis. Found this one on Marketplace. The description said it used to run but doesn't turn on anymore, and it was cheap. It has some minor cosmetic issues that I don't really care about. The seat's ripped, of course, a few screws missing. It appears that some kind of speedometer should be here, but isn't. I doubt the zip tie was factory. That looks a little floppy. The wires look a little suspect. This is definitely a speedometer cable, and most likely it had a speedometer attached to it at some point. You may have noticed that there are no levers in this gas tank. They moved them. Down here is a little bent up piece of wire. You slide that in and out, and that is your high, low, and super low range. Right here is the engagement for the four-wheel drive. You only have 2 positions, 2 and 4-wheel drive. No differential lock. Well, that's quite a hornet's nest that was in here. We'll just get rid of that. I just noticed, that skid plate is plastic. I see a few welds here and there. It looks like something cracked and it was re-welded, so that's good. There's the same gear case the Suzuki uses. This uses a double wishbone independent rear suspension, and that is a major difference. The tires are real nice, actually way better than the ones I had on my King Quad. It has headlights, they look okay, and they're pointed mostly forward. This is pushed in a little bit, definitely has run into a thing or two here. It has a level gauge, but the protective bubble is missing, and that is concave. So effectively this is a funnel, so any rainwater will go straight into the gas tank. That doesn't look particularly useful. I found out when taking it off the ramps on the truck, there is absolutely no way to slow this thing down. There is one brake lever that controls all the wheels, and it doesn't actually do any braking. There also is a foot pedal that does absolutely nothing for braking. Basically, it's pretty much perfect. I can't believe I got this that cheap. Let's turn on the fuel. There is an ignition key, so that's good. In run position here. This is a choke, or fuel enrichment, I guess. Absolutely nothing happens with the start button, which doesn't surprise me. So we do the compression release, the pull starter. That just engaged the electric starter. I'm smelling fuel and it smells really old. Maybe it's just fumes coming from that. Looks like someone put a new carburetor on this already, so there's probably a carburetor issue. I didn't see anything catastrophic, so I decided to give it a real good yank. That idle is way too high. Alright, that idle is way too high and I can't get to the adjuster. For some reason, the knob for adjusting is way down there. There's the exhaust pipe, so that's nice and hot. I can't really fit my hand in here at all. I'm just going to remove this bit of air box here. There we go. There's the carburetor. Now we have 2 cables go into this. That one's the fuel enrichment, this one's the throttle. And I think I'm already seeing the problem. That cable doesn't actually fit in the hole it's supposed to go in. Looks like someone bought one of those universal Chinese carburetors that never really fits the application it's meant for, and it didn't fit the application it's meant for. All we have to do is make that hole bigger, and bigger is easy. In order to get the throttle cable out, we got to take off this plate. While I was doing that, I noticed this line is awfully wiggly. That hose clamp has no tension on it at all. Shutting off the fuel for now. Right down at the bottom is the throttle stop that sets the idle speed. This plate can't actually reach it. Even if I can get this adjuster screw working, we got to fix the cable before that does any good. I'm having a lot of trouble getting this cable to come off, so I'm just going to take the whole carburetor out so I can see it better. It's just rubber mounted, 2 clamps. Also noticing this intake tube leaves something to be desired. The filter's in there, unfiltered air is going in there, right into the engine. Now it's a lot easier to see. I also made sure to tilt it on its side so all the fuel ran out the vent tube. That way I get the old fuel smell to kind of add to the experience. Pull this back. I'm going to use a screwdriver to hold it open. You use a pair of needle nose pliers and twist it till the cable lines up with the slot. Pull this little brass thing out. Then the cable comes out of this little brass adapter. It really does. There we go. And now the cable comes out. This end has a step on it. We need a hole that's bigger than the small diameter and smaller than the big diameter. We got 222 on the small diameter, 251 on the big diameter. Now this drill bit set has fractional by 64ths, letters, and number drill bits. Usually I can find what I need here. I haven't broken it. Let's go for the numbers. Start here. And that might just do it. Now carb material is real soft, so you got to make sure you go pretty gentle on it and get it as straight as you can. Already biting in. If I don't drill all the way through, I'll have the bottom of the hole for it to stop on too. There we go. Ah, looks like it fits in perfect. We're almost right on that edge. That was lucky. Now it goes all the way to the bottom. There's even a little bit of slack in the throttle cable. Full throttle goes all the way up, so we're good. Got all our travel back. Got the hose clamp replaced. This cable's all bent up, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. I think I can get it to work. I don't use duct tape nearly often enough. It's really handy. Didn't fix the tears in the boots, but it keeps air from going into them. Make sure the duct tape goes in the area where the clamp sits. That way the clamp clamps on the boot and holds the tape down. We got to be professional about this. Idle's a little low, but at least it's not high. Low, we can fix. Alright, now when I give it the gas, it dies. Now a little more fiddling's required. Let it warm up for a second here. Warming up helped a lot. Getting there. But there's only one thing to do now. Oh yeah, no brakes. I kept it in a low range because of the no brake issue. So far it seemed to drive fine. Reverse even works. I've had it on the battery charger almost all the day, so we're going to see if we have any luck with this button. Oh hey, we got a reverse indicator. It's in forward, it's not in reverse, but the reverse indicator's on. This button does nothing. I wonder if it thinks it's in gear, and it needs to think it's in neutral before it lets the starter button work. Let's see. Oh, I can get it to turn off if I push really far forward. Oh. That was the problem with the starter. But that battery's totally dead. We gotta do something about that. I added a new battery, admired the wiring job. That looks totally fine. Notice there's nothing holding the battery in at all. The parts diagram showed me what I needed, but they were really expensive used. So I decided to just sort of make one up. I want to point out that I bought the software in 2004. No updates for me. This looks nice, but I need a flat pattern. There it is. A little warm, let it cool for a second. I added a feature that wasn't on my original model. Just a little crease is all I need. That'll add a lot of stiffness. Got a little bit of packing foam left over. Gonna add a little bit of goop here. I was using this on another job. Figured it'll be sticky enough. I had that goop out for working on this. You'll see this in a future video, once I finish it. These are going to be switched in place by the battery anyway, so pretty much they just have to not fall off while I install it. I probably go with a stiffer foam, but it seems like the battery's in place and it's not falling out. Looks like when you shift into reverse, the lever actually hits this plastic. And by the looks of this plastic, the factory didn't do a particularly good job of cutting it out. There's all sorts of burrs and frayed edges on this, and then you can see the mark where the lever's been hitting it for years. So I'm going to take a 5/8 hole saw, stick an old wheel stud in the end, and let's get this in there. And that'll act as a pilot to keep me from going too far. Lost the bolt, but made the hole. Now there's about an 1/8 inch of clearance there. Now I'm going to do what the factory should have done, take a deburring tool and run it around the edge here. There. Now we have a nice chamfered edge with no burrs. Now I got this driving, I want to address the brake issue. When doing brakes, I always start with the most upstream thing first, and that's the master cylinder, because all the fluid goes out of there. And then I can worry about stuff downstream. It won't contaminate the new stuff. I found rebuild kits are readily available for this master cylinder at only 10 bucks. And I had one in my cart, and then I noticed the plastic on the reservoir is pretty bad, and those are available too. But then I found the entire assembly's available for $15. So that's cheaper than the rebuild kit and reservoir put together. As I was starting to take this master cylinder off, I noticed it's tilted way down. And when I drove this, it seemed like the bars were too far forward. And someone really did a number there. Looks like someone took something pretty severe like a pipe wrench to those bars, which I don't really understand because you just loosen up these bolts and they turn freely. Not sure why someone would do that. You can even see it's D-shaped, so there's a gap on the clamps now. There we go. Now the fluid reservoir is level. Back to what I was supposed to be doing. This incredibly cheap master cylinder is a direct bolt-in. Even has a connector for the brake light switch, so that plugs right in. This container was sealed at one point, so I think it qualifies as a sealed container. Now you're probably supposed to bench bleed this, but I'm not going to. I see bubbles coming out already. I think what I'm going to do is pop open a bleeder and let fluid flow downhill. I don't actually see a bleeder, so I'm just going to crack the banjo fitting and let fluid go out that way. That is on there. There we go. Ah, nice black fluid. We'll let that drip for a little bit. Well, the brake system's flushing. I'm going to take care of this by replacing it with this. Looks like the same length. This one has a plastic top and a vent tube. Huh, I'm almost completely out of fuel. But now, at least what fuel I do have won't get water in it. If you've never seen one of these fuel gauges, they're pretty neat. You got the gauge face there, you got a float, and you got a little twisted piece of flat metal. The float moves up and down with the fuel level, and see how that flat bar turns? That is directly connected to the gauge. So you can tell your fuel level at a glance with no electronics at all. The fluid looks pretty clear here. I'll tighten this back up. Now let's see what happens. We got bubbles, more bubbles. Oh, I'm feeling something. That feels like it's doing something. Now I've gone to the front ones. And again, we have black fluid. We'll just wait till it runs clear. Now I've drained all the calipers until the juices ran clear. We'll button that up. We definitely got a pedal. I guess it's not a pedal, it's a handle. We've got a handle. Feels like brakes. Let's see if we have brakes. You're my tester. Yep, we got brakes. A little spongy, but there's probably still some air in there because I didn't bleed them properly. Definitely stops though. I want to deal with this floppiness because it just seems like this is going to be a problem. I looked at pictures online. There's supposed to be a thing around here. Tried to buy one, and I found it. But it had the dash piece in it also, which is a good thing because that also solves my wiring problem. These wires are nice and good. I think the sky is telling me it's time to quit for the evening. Still a ways away. I got a little time. While you were watching that thunderstorm, I got this thing installed. It was real easy. The hardest part was getting to the connectors under here, but all you would have seen is my hand. So the thunderstorm was better. I want to get the brakes working a little better, so that rear tire is coming off. Apparently these brake calipers do have a bleeder on them, but it's on the wheel side. Right there. So you can't actually get to it without taking off the tire. I can see some debris running down, so we'll let that flow for a little bit. While I'm in here for bleeding that brake, I want to take a look at this brake. This foot pedal operates that cable operated caliper, which is a totally mechanical brake. And that doesn't work either. Looks like it's adjusted all the way, so I'm guessing that's probably just worn out pads. Oh. Yeah, those pads look a little worn. There's almost no friction material whatsoever left on these. This is what a new pad should look like. This set was under $5 delivered. I assume they just pop right in. Doesn't look like anything actually holds them in place. They just kind of float around in there. So we'll just put one on either side of the disc and hope it all goes together. I couldn't adjust these wide enough to get them over the rotor. I had backed out this adjuster all the way, but it looks like the other end also has an adjuster. So I'm going to back that one out. There we go. Now it fits. That was an awful lot of adjusting to avoid buying a $5 set of pads. Seems like something I would do. That pedal travel seems a lot better. That might do something now. These tires are directional, and they even have an arrow telling you which way it's supposed to rotate, which is this way. Unless this thing was being driven backwards all the time, these are on the wrong way. So I'm going to flip them around while I have the rear end jacked up. Tires that are designed for spinning in the dirt always have the same basic shape. And the point is, as it spins, it pushes dirt out to the sides. You'll see this on ATVs, on tractors, on heavy equipment, and a lot of truck tires where they point the dirt outwards. My understanding is the reason for wanting to move the dirt off to the side is that way it doesn't build up a mound behind you. Most of the dirt's off to the side and you can back up easier. I have intentionally mounted these backwards, but that was because I wanted to scoop the material behind it. When it's a liquid, that's fine. Even though this tear on the seat isn't really functional, I've noticed that as I ride it, little flakes of the foam are coming out. I got a seat cover. I've installed a lot of these seat covers over the years, and every single one of them has gone really badly. I haven't had a single one yet that looked halfway decent when I was done with it. But I'm going to try to change the way I do it and do this one a little better. Let's pull this old one off of here. We've got a plastic base here, and normally the cover is just stapled right on. And the stapling part is one of my big problems. I started off trying a stapler like this, and that mostly went in, but not all the way. Then I went to a stapler like this. It went in all the way, but it's right on the edge. It would never actually hold up. And I kept missing and making a mess all over the place. I found this pneumatic stapler on Amazon, and for 35 bucks, it came with a stapler and a giant pile of different size staples. These are 1,250 staples per pack. That's good value in just staples alone. This is a factory installed fitting with a lot of excess Teflon tape and doesn't really fit well. Try to hold the hose so it doesn't leak too badly. See how this one does. I can aim it precisely and drive the staples in nicely. This might work better. Now I'm just using a screwdriver to pry all the old staples out, including the new ones I just added. Get this old cover off of here. This dip in the seat probably should be filled up before I put the cover on, because I bet that'll be visible. I have some upholstery foam left over from some other seats I'd made, and I was trying to figure out how to shape this to size. I realized that was a bad idea. Because this isn't any normal squarish shape, it's just sort of all over the place. So what I'm going to try is cutting up pieces of old packing foam that's thin and build up the layers. So I'm going to start with a thin piece that's small, that fits right in the middle. And then, let's see, a slightly thicker piece. Now a slightly wider piece. Not the way you're supposed to use contact adhesive, but all this adhesive needs to do is keep this in place while I put the cover on. Once it's on, that should stay. And so I'm going wider and wider to fill up this canyon-like crevice. Feels like maybe one more. Just kind of shaping it, feeling it, and hopefully it's close enough. The other problem I always have is positioning this cover. Now, to help myself out, I actually bought a cover that looked the correct shape. Usually I buy the cheapest one available. Those aren't usually the right shape. They're usually just a flat piece of vinyl and you kind of have to make it fit. This one looks like it's actually the right shape to start with, which I think will help. And what I normally do is I'll get this all centered up, try to squish it down, and then just flip it over and start attaching it. Usually ends up I get one side attached, then when I pull the other side tight, the whole thing goes off center. So I'm going to try to get around that too. Now I put some clamps on that seam. I'm going to use a bungee cord to pull the two together. I've got these two clamps pulling it kind of tight. Still got wrinkles in it, but I think I might be able to pull this part forward as I go. That back part looks fairly decent. So what I might just do is attach the back part and then figure out what to do on the front. It's not too bad. Got to pull these corners taut when I get those, and we might have the back part okay. Reasonable. I got the back stapled to about here, so it's time to take off these clamps. I kind of think what I should do is pull this way to get these wrinkles out. And I think if I pull something like that, then pull these sides in, maybe that'll do it. Hopefully that'll do it. We'll find out. Now I just gotta fold up this end. Guess this is good practice for wrapping Christmas presents. Alright, now let's see what I've done. It's not perfect. You can see the foam repair, there's a little wrinkle, but this is by far the best one I've ever done in my life. So I'm calling this one a win. And my apologies to professional upholstery people. You probably cringed the whole way through. But it's done and I'm happy with it. So now I can move on. But before I install this, I got a few more parts to put in because another box just arrived. Here's a box I got. For a little over 15 bucks, I got the rubber boot. They replaced my duct tape one and a replacement intake manifold. There are a few cracks in that old one, so it might need this too. I don't want any vacuum leaks. I'm going to disconnect this fuel line because I don't like where that fuel filter is. Let's get all this stuff out of there and do a little refiguring. It's actually easier to remove this thing with that intake manifold. Oh, there's the old gas smell again. Than to try to fit the carb into that rubber boot. I noticed a big crack in this old manifold. I'm not sure if it goes all the way to the interior, but for the extra $5, I think it was a good idea to get the new one. Huh, this one has a nice O-ring seal. The factory one didn't have that. It has no gasket either. There was no gasket whatsoever on this old manifold. At least now I have a nice little O-ring. Another issue I'm going to correct is this idle screw adjuster, because this whole thing flopping around made this a real pain to adjust. I'll leave a sharp little stub there, that way I have a little something to grip on, but it won't be flopping around and interfering with turning it. Now we can start putting this thing back together. The brand new manifold is a completely different diameter. It's off by over 1/8 inch. So that's disappointing. I can't use the new one. But this brand new manifold that had an O-ring in it that doesn't need a gasket came with a gasket, which I need for my old manifold. There's some cracks on the outside, but they don't seem to go to the inside, so I don't think we'll have a vacuum leak issue. Put this all together with my new gasket. Everything's all tightened down now, and looks like we're leak-free. This is a fuel filter that used to be right here. No hose clamps that had potential fuel leaks directly above the hot engine. That might add excitement to the ride, but I think I'm going to move this. There's a long piece of fuel line that went this way to the filter, which is now attached to the carburetor, and that is going to go forward. I'm going to take the fuel filter out, reverse directions on it, add some hose clamps, and reinstall the same line, just reversed. And now the filter's above this big open area that is not the engine. Out the filter here, I have a little more room to install this air intake that I took off initially. I probably should see how the air filter looks while I'm in here. Oh, it has one. I think we're done under here. We'll try this out. This rear fender is missing a few of these plastic rivets, and I want to take care of that. Because of my King Quad, I ended up losing one of these mud flaps while trailering it. And it's only after that I found out how expensive they are. So my Suzuki is missing a mud flap and won't be getting a new one anytime soon. But since this one has them, I want to make sure they stay on. I got a bunch of different plastic fasteners and rivet type things. We'll see which ones fit. That is far too loose in there, but it fits there. Got some of these push type fasteners. Those actually look too big. Yep, too big. Same kind of thing, a little smaller. Oh, the diameter looks good, but they're too short. These are a little bit longer. Ah, yeah. There we go. They don't match, but they work. And that's all that really matters. Now it's time for testing. First, super low for yard work. No problem pulling a Jeep and its trailer. Now the important donut brake. And this is kind of a fail. It had way too much traction and just wouldn't slide the rear end around. But since we had so much traction, let's try a hill. This was not going as expected. I figured I'd try a little more speed, lost the speed on a bump, and then was in too high of a gear. This hill is small, but doesn't have a whole lot of traction. More speed was the answer though. This thing is not positive at all. I don't even know if it's actually really shifting into four-wheel drive. When you bounce, sometimes it just pops right out. Something's wrong there. Well, there's the problem with the four-wheel drive lever. It's not actually doing anything. It's just moving the cable, not the end. Which means I haven't had four-wheel drive yet in this. No wonder I can't go up a hill. I removed that broken cable entirely, and now I can move that lever that would give me four-wheel drive manually. And that should do it. And that did it. These front wheels are now engaged through an open differential. Now these Articats only had the option of two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive with an open differential. They did not come with the differential lock position that the Suzuki King Quad has. But I heard that differential has a secret, and I heard it on YouTube So it's got to be true. That lever's all the way down and can't go any further. It's actually hitting the case here. But it's on a spline shaft. I'm going to take the bolt that locks this in place, take it out entirely. We'll wiggle it off the shaft here. And then I'm going to rotate it. Let's try 2 splines just to see what happens. Slide it back on. And now, there's another position. That differential is locked now. Now with 2 splines, it was hitting the case directly. I moved it 1 more, so now we're 3 splines offset, and that's free to turn. So we have locked, 4-wheel drive unlocked, and 2-wheel drive. This is that front grille piece that was all caved in. While we got it off, let's straighten it out. Much better. Now with all 4 wheels driving, I went back to that same hill. And didn't make it. Huh. But those front wheels were definitely turning now. They even dug a good-sized hole. I'll try a little more RPM. And now, no problem. On to some flat ground. The suspension works surprisingly well for a 4x4. I had to test thoroughly to be sure. So there we have it. The quad I bought that doesn't turn on anymore now runs and drives pretty nicely. I'm happy with it. But the question is, how happy? Do I now think this is the best quad ever made versus the Suzuki King Quad? I don't know. There's some things I like, there's some things I don't like. I'm gonna have to do a serious comparison. And my Suzuki's up at the mine. So I gotta bring this up to the mine, set up a test track, and do a head-to-head comparison to know for sure. But for now, I'm gonna go have some more fun on this thing. Hope you guys are having fun too, and we'll see you next time.